Hey guys, and welcome to the first video in my Frosthaven class sort of first look series of videos. This one's going to be about the Banner Spear. In this series, I'm literally just going to be looking as a first impression on the starting cards and the low level cards that we've had revealed so far for Frosthaven, seeing how they compare to the original starting classes in Gloomhaven, see what the power level's like, the difficulty of playing these classes, and generally kind of how they're going to fit in the sort of party as we go on. To preface this is very early thoughts. This is just me shooting from the hip. It's going to be a bit of a talking headpiece. It's going to be kind of long, and it's going to be a bit rough around the edges compared to some of my other videos. So forgive me for that, but this is just like a video that I've been asked about, and I've been asked to do this video a few times, and I've promised it, so it's finally here. So I hope you enjoy it. Please like and subscribe if you do, and yeah, let's just get into it. Okay, so the Banner Spear is the first class we've got here. Let's just go through like the starting stats really. So 10 cards in hand, that's pretty decent. That's actually on the middling kind of side. That's the middle to high end of number of cards. Health wise though, very healthy character. Looks like they are going to be quite a tanky character. This kind of health pool is pretty similar to the Brute from the starting game. So apart from that, on the card, pretty average. There's no changes here to speak of compared to standard Gloomhaven from the stats. So let's go over to the cards. So on the cards, let's have a look at the different things that we've got here. So for level 1, we've got at all costs here. So there's a heal ability on the top. Heal 3, affect all allies. That is quite strong. But there's a downside here, which is that we suffer 1 damage for each ally whose hit point value increased with the heal ability. Okay, well this is kind of cool and pretty thematic actually, and it's actually going to tie in really well to the extra health that we have here. So we're able to help our allies out by healing, but we're going to take some damage ourselves. But that works out quite well, because if we're a tank and we're trying to absorb damage, that could really help in certain situations where, you know, perhaps positioning or initiative has taken one of our allies into a bit of a dangerous situation. So yeah, this is nice. This is strong. This is definitely a very strong early healing ability, and this can be mitigated in lots of different ways, so it's good. Summon reinforcement is the bottom, which is a summon. 1 health. 1 health is terrible. I mean, it means that it's essentially not going to do anything. It's got 2 movement, but it's got no attacks, which is interesting. But it says here that we control the movement of the summon, which is obviously a change to the usual rule of that the summons work like monsters. So they usually have like a programmable AI, like they have an AI that controls their movement. So you being able to control means that you can probably keep this thing alive if you play smart. 1 XP, this is going to come into play later, I'm assuming, for some reason. We'll see. Okay, on to Rallying Cry. So we've got attack 3, disarm. There's these hexes here, which is something that I'm not aware of. I presume this is an ally square. So usually we would have a hex pattern here, which is our positioning. So our positioning would be the grey square. The red position would be the enemy. And usually we wouldn't. This is a new type of hex. So I believe this is an ally. I don't know for sure, but I think this is probably an ally. As I said, this is me blindly looking at it for first times, but let's say this must be some sort of ally. And it's an attack 3, disarm, and 1 XP, and it's not a burn. This is super good. If you can set this up, and I can see now why you would need a summon, because you could probably set this up very easily with a summon. To disarm an enemy, that's really good. Really good. And for 1 XP and it's not a burn at a level 1 card, excellent. Good control card. And the bottom is another summon. This time with 4 health. Oh, but it doesn't move. It's a Banner of Strength. All allies in range 2 add +1 attack to one of their attacks each turn. That's interesting. Okay. That's like super thematic too, right? You stick down a little banner that kind of like buffs your team. This is it's kind of similar to some of the Tinkerer's effects in Gloomhaven. So the Tinkerer had an effect called an enhancement field, which is one of their starting cards in Gloomhaven, which allowed you to increase the attack of adjacent enemies. And that was that could lead to some really good combos, but it was quite hard to set up. This will certainly be a lot easier to set up, but because it doesn't move, this could be a bit awkward. So I'll be interested to see if there's a way we can make this move and follow us throughout the dungeon. But this is really good. And if you put this in like the middle of a room and you can protect it, this could be really useful, really useful. And it's 2 XP, and it's, you know, stays out, but it's a loss card, and that makes sense. Actually, that was interesting. This isn't a loss. That's really unique. So pretty much, I think every summon in original Gloomhaven was a loss. So we're now starting to see summons that aren't loss cards. So that's interesting. But this one is a loss, and that makes sense because it's a very powerful effect, and it's 2 experience points. But already I'm seeing ways that we can quite easily get experience points with this character without having to burn cards, which is ideal. Unbreakable Wall. So an attack 3, push 1, and it's going to attack. That is a big attack. 3 enemies. I mean, again, this is kind of like an unlikely situation. These kind of patterns in Gloomhaven were always, you could set them up, and occasionally you would get maybe every other scenario or every few scenarios, depending on how like clever you're playing. But it's usually quite difficult to actually set up these kind of complex patterns of enemies. So the way to think about these is it's much more likely that you're probably going to get 2 people here rather than 3. I always like to look at these cards from the perspective of, hey, if we were to get like 2 out of these 3, is it still good? And this is still very good to attack 2 for 3 with a push 1. You can compare this to something like the Brute's Leaping Cleave. So the Brute has a card at level 1 which is Leaping Cleave, and that is essentially an attack 3 with a 2. So it would be like with this grey and just these 2 reds, for example. And that's an attack 3 for 1 experience point. Doesn't have the push, so this is better. This is definitely better. I'd be interested to know if this ally is a requirement. I haven't seen anything. Presumably that's going to be in the rulebook. There's nothing explained here on this class, so this class must be fairly straightforward, and this is like a new mechanic going forward. So if this is allies, then this will be harder, and if this is a requirement that there must be an ally, then this will be a bit harder. But as we said, the summon reinforcements there, we can control this. This will always go before us. Summons always act before, or they did in Gloomhaven. Presumably it's still the same. So you would be able to set this up. So this is decent. This is very decent. And the bottom of this is shield 1. All of our ranged attacks have range -1. That's weird. Okay, that's a kind of an interesting effect. So you're going to shield up, you get 2 XP, and all of my ranged attacks have range -1. And this just stays out for a round, I believe. Which is kind of interesting. No, sorry, it stays out until we get rid of it, right? No, it stays out until we get rid of it. So we just have a persistent shield 1. But with not much of a drawback. This is pretty strong. Especially if you wanted to go for a tank build. Again, there is something the Brute gets. But that's not a level 1 that gives him a persistent shield. So this is a really strong tanking card, because I mean the attacks that I've seen so far haven't been ranged. So, but let's carry on. But this seems pretty strong. Definitely, this wouldn't be like a level 1 effect or it isn't a level 1 effect in Gloomhaven. So the drawback at the moment, I'm not seeing that being too much of a problem. But let's see. Okay, Javelin. So we do have a ranged attack. Attack 3, range 3, make the wind element. Super simple, nothing too fancy. It's a decent card. This is like the benchmark of like, this is a absolutely fine attack card. Like for level 1, bog standard. Move 4 on the bottom. Move 4 is great. We haven't had any movement so far, so this could be quite an important card because of the movement. And if you're going to use the shield, that probably means that this card is going to become less and less relevant. So the move 4 is going to be where it's at. So I'm thinking that this could work quite nicely, actually. So minusing the range is probably going to be too much of a problem. You're a tank. You're going to be in people's faces anyway. Having the minus range probably isn't going to be a huge problem for you. And you're probably going to be using this card as a move 4 most of the time. So that's pretty good. I haven't said anything about initiative yet, but so far 10, very, very early initiative. 10 is super early. And it's nice to have 10 on something like a heal, because quite often it will be because you'll want to play a heal because the previous round played out badly. So being able to do an early heal can be great. You could also maybe pair this with a late one if you wanted to like preempt some damage, but likelihood is that with this heal 3 you're going to be wanting to play it early. So I like the fact it's got a nice early initiative on it. Okay, so deflecting maneuver. Attack 2. All attacks against you this round gain disadvantage. Okay. I mean, that's fine. It's a good tanking card. It's a way to get like a little bit of damage in. And then also get like another benefit if you are the main tank for your party. So I quite like this. This will have a really big diminishing effect though as the game goes on. So this is like a level 1 card that is like fine at level 1, but once you start to amp up the difficulty and the levels and the enemies start getting more health, attack 2 becomes really underwhelming. So unless you have a really good attack modifier deck, this card is, I mean, it's going to be great at, it's going to be great at level 1. It's going to be a decent card for you, but as you go on, I can see this card diminishing in its returns. The bottom is shield 2. This shield only applies to ranged attacks. Huh. That's cool. That's actually pretty cool. Because shield 2 is super powerful. Especially like on level 1, shield 2. I mean, quite often in Gloomhaven, you'll only be attacked for maybe, if you get unlucky, you can get, hit for a lot of damage. But, the average amount of damage you might take on a turn is something like 3 or 4. So being able to block half of it would be crazy good. But this only applying to range attacks, I think is enough of a nerf to the card to allow it to still, for it to be like a level 1 card. Like it's enough of a kind of downside on the card, but also it means that this card's going to have potentially some good sideboard potential on certain scenarios. So on certain scenarios where you have a lot of ranged enemies, this could come back into rotation. Like I was saying, that this card's going to potentially, I feel like the top's going to diminish over time, but this could actually be quite a nice little sideboard card, which is good because there isn't too many of those in Gloomhaven. You do generally tend to find a build that works for you and you stick to it, but this is like really nice sort of sideboard type potential for a tricky mission. So I like this. This is like a nice card, and the initiative again is really good, and you need a low initiative on anything that's going to basically survive a round. So this means that you could just play this card 15. The chances are, unless you're against super quick enemies, that you should be able to get the full effect of these two effects. So nice, and they're not burns, which is good. Okay, tip of the spear. It's an attack 3, pierce 3. Wow, pierce is a really important effect. So pierce, you don't see too much pierce. The only character is the Brute, I believe, who has like access to pierce, but again, that's that's not even a level 1 card. I believe that's like a level 2 card. They have a pierce card. It's called something similar to this, actually. I think it might even be called Javelin. It's very similar to this. It's a very similar pattern, except it doesn't have this ally pattern here. But it's like only a Pierce 2. So Pierce 3 is huge. This is a big buff for people who like to play on harder difficulty levels, because generally shields go up and stuff like that. They generally, like, the enemies start getting tougher. They start adding extra shields and things to enemies. So Pierce can be really good for that. But this is nice, and it's not a burn. So very good. I believe you also need to spend an element for the Brute one. So this is just straight up, it works as long as you can get this allied positioning right. So I like this. And on the bottom, move 4. Again, another strong card. If you can't use this top, this move 4 is excellent. So this seems like a very good, solid card to me. You're going to see some good use out of this card. Power level wise, again, it's a little bit more powerful, I would say, than what typically you would see at level 1. Let's go down to combined effort. So we've got attack 4, wounds, and 1 XP. Wow. That is powerful. For a non-burn card effect, that is crazy good. This is super powerful. So this is a big power spike compared to what you will see at level 1 in Gloomhaven. You know, this card would most definitely be a burn card in Gloomhaven, I would say. The fact, I mean, wound is a really powerful effect. If you can get it off early, it can be really good, and it's essentially an extra point of damage. The initiative is 32, so in theory, if you were to use this as your like your leading initiative and to go on 32, there is a chance that perhaps you wouldn't get the wound damage that round, but it's still pretty early, so against certain enemies this will certainly work. So maybe there's been some changes, I don't know, to the enemies to kind of balance this stuff out, so maybe the enemies are harder, I don't know, but this is certainly much more powerful than we would expect. And I'm still thinking that this kind of this setup that they're having here with an ally it looks like it's going to be much more complicated than it's really going to be to achieve. I think that this will be fairly easy to achieve. Again though, this is going to come down to people playing the game fairly. If you're playing in a multiplayer situation, how much information do you give to each other? Personally, when I play Gloomhaven, we don't talk too much about, you know, what hex we're going to be in, what number of exact initiative we're going to be on. We generally talk in kind of blanket terms like, hey, there's an enemy over there, don't worry about him, I'm going to deal with that enemy this turn, or hey, I'm going super early, which, you know, after you play a while, the meta game builds up and people understand roughly what that means. But I don't think it's going to be too difficult to make this happen. So this is super powerful. Move 2. 2 allies within range 2 may perform move 2. I've never been a huge fan of this effect. This like allowing allies to move. Sometimes it can help you out. So for example, this in this instance, with the allies that we have here, so this new mechanic of having to have somebody next to you in order to do some of these cards, this actually has a buff, so this is actually a lot more useful. However, you want to be doing the top of this card every time you can. So I think the bottom of this card is, I mean, it could have some corner use to set you up for maybe if you wanted to do like this pierce, for example, like you really wanted to get this off. Because you had a high armor enemy, and it was really important for you to a high shield enemy, so it was really important for you to get the pierce. But I think this is sort of average. I mean, it will allow you to maybe get people out of the way, so it can allow you to like tank better as well. So in a situation where perhaps your enemy's gone a bit too far forward, your ally's gone a bit too far forward, you can help them kind of like get out of the firing line. So I think this is definitely, it's going to be more useful than it was in Gloomhaven, this effect, but how useful I can't say at this point. Okay, anytime an enemy moves from a hex not adjacent to you to hex adjacent to you this round, that enemy suffers 2 damage. This is good. Okay, this is good. So you might hear, like, if you've played Gloomhaven before, you might hear the term, well, we use the term, like, true damage or pure damage, which is basically any effect that just gives damage. So traps, for example, do that. They ignore things like shield. They ignore things like disadvantage, you know, a model when you're trying to attack. You're not drawing cards, you're just dealing damage directly to the target. They are very strong because quite often when you're dealing with high shield enemies, this is the best way to kill them. And there are certain characters like the Cragheart who has access to this in base Gloomhaven from the starting classes, and it's a very strong effect. So this could be great, especially if you can pair this with any kind of pull effect. This could be really good. So I like this. This is strong, and this is definitely a good utility card to help you deal with some tricky enemies. And again, the initiative is really important on these types of cards that last a round, and it's a low initiative, so the chances are you're going to be able to make this work pretty consistently, so that's good. And the bottom is move 4 and an attack 3 with a burn. So this is interesting because you really don't want to use this early on in the scenario. You don't want to be burning cards early, but this is certainly a good... This is like a good way to, you know, to get stuck in at the end when you are in trouble. So this is, you know, it's a high amount of movement, and you're going to stick a little attack on the end. I think that's great, because that actually allows you to, if you're in a bit of a sticky situation and, you know, your teammates are running out of cards and you have quite a large hand size as the Banner Spear, so you have the ability to get stuck in and get attacking. And also perhaps if, you know, hey, your ally's about to die because they're stuck in, you know, they're going to be the focus of monster attacks that round, and you're a little bit further behind, you can go on 21, you can move in and you can attack and you can take that damage for them. So I like this. I think this is quite a nice little effect, and this is strong. So this card in general is, I think, definitely up the power creep compared to standard Gloomhaven. Pincer movement, attack 5, muddle, 1 XP, and you've got again a pincer movement. Nice. Nice. Okay, attack 5, muddle. This is, I mean, attack 5, that is not a number that you would see on a non-burn card. That is just not a number that you would see on a non-burn card in normal Gloomhaven. That is a lot of damage. So I don't know if they're making the enemies harder in Frosthaven. You know, they're saying that you can bring the characters from Gloomhaven over into Frosthaven, but I'm telling you right now, at level 1, this character is way stronger than the current melee characters in Gloomhaven at level 1, from what I've seen. So attack 5, muddle, and you've got the XP there. Muddle is great. I like muddle because it can generally... I mean, you can get unlucky, right? And the guy still draws a double damage and a +2, or, you know, there are obviously bad draws. You're just playing the cards. But typically, muddle can save you a point of damage here or there, or it can completely save your bacon sometimes. So, yeah, I like muddle as an effect. So, this is very strong, very, very strong. And it's not a burn. It's crazy to me. Move 1 and loot 1. Again, this is something that I think only one character... I think the Scoundrel has access to this at level 1 in Gloomhaven. But every other character, all of their loot cards, all of the starting characters, all of their loot cards are just loot. You don't get to move, and that's why they're difficult, because you have to kind of preemptively move into a position, wait a turn, then loot. So you kind of like... I'm not a huge fan of loot cards in general because of that, because you almost have to sacrifice a good turn to take loot. Now this is an interesting change, so this is going to allow you to potentially loot as you go a little bit more efficiently, because there's going to be plenty of times when maybe you don't need to move 2, you only need to move 1, and also you can kind of keep progressing through the level, which is important. So perhaps this is just a shift in design, because they're kind of understanding that looting was... I mean, certain characters were really good at looting, other characters not, and it did create a kind of a bit of a loot imbalance in the game, where some characters would have loads of money, some characters wouldn't. So this could be a nice way of just kind of like speeding up the looting process. So it'll be interesting to see if the other classes have this, but this is a big improvement on other starting classes, depending on if the other classes have it too, of course. Regroup. Heal 2, range 2, regenerate. Okay, so this is a pretty like standard card. Heal 2 is nothing special, but a heal 2 is fine. It's I mean, from what I've seen so far, this character isn't really a support type character that would maybe need to use this on other people. You might need to heal yourself. It looks like you are going to be the primary damage taker. So that's what we're going to be doing. However, regenerate is an interesting effect that was actually brought in the expansion. So it's nice to see that they're bringing in stuff from the expansion. Regenerate is, I believe regenerate is a way of you gaining health at the beginning of your next turn. I need to actually look up regenerate because I haven't, that's one thing that I haven't played yet. I haven't actually played the expansion yet. So I'm just going to quickly look up what regenerate. Okay, yeah, so regenerate. Basically, you perform a heal 1 at the start of each turn. Even if you have stun, if the figure suffers any damage, the regenerate token is removed and the damage continues normally. If you have both wound and regenerate, regenerate effect happens first, removing the wound token and healing normally. So regenerate is basically a really nice way of you, perhaps you have an ally who takes a lot of damage, you can then chuck regenerate on them and they can hang out at the back, especially if they're ranged, and they can just kind of keep getting some extra health. So regenerate is a really nice mechanic, and actually makes this pretty powerful. So if we go back to the sheet, so regroup, like this actually makes this really quite powerful. Being able to heal 2 and then allow a character to keep healing 1 every turn is great. You're not going to be using this on yourself because you're going to be the tank, so you're going to be taking damage each turn. So regenerate doesn't really have an effect for you, but I can see this being quite useful for a ally. It'd be interesting to see how this works because I don't see this character as a support character. So, but this is a powerful effect for sure. So this is a very strong effect for level 1. 2 allies within range 3 may perform move 3. Again, previously in Gloomhaven, I was not a fan of this effect. I didn't think that there weren't very many characters who could really make use of this effect. However, with different attack cards like this could actually be quite useful. So, I mean, the jury's not out on this. 20 as well on the initiative for this one. I like, because again, you can make sure you move people into the right positions and you can get a heal off early. And it heals at the beginning of their turn, so there's a chance that you could heal for 3 that round. So, useful. Okay, Resolved Courage. This is like into the X cards now, so these are kind of like the ones that you can kind of chop and change. I mean, you can chop and change the level 1s too, because you get access to everything, but these are considered to be kind of like the chop and changey type cards. I'm not quite sure as to why they decided to actually have it. I'm sure it's something to do with enhancements, why they have X versus level 1, why they don't just have all of them be level 1. Perhaps that's also because they want you to think about the cards differently. I'm not entirely sure, but it could be to do with enhancements. Attack 3, Immobilize for 1 XP, and it's not a burn. Again, this is excellent. This really is excellent, especially if you could tie this into, say for example, these are 3 ranged enemies, or even if you could just get 2 ranged enemies here, move in, attack them and immobilize them. That means they're going to be attacking you for disadvantage that round, which can be very good. Also could trigger retaliate effects. Very good. So if we can get access to some retaliate effects as well, this could be extremely good. Yeah, this is very strong effect. Add +1 attack to your next attack action this turn. So that's interesting. So there, I believe the most of the classes have, well, not most of the classes, there are certain classes that don't, but a lot of the classes can kind of have access to this kind of thing. The Cragheart has access to this, but it's actually, I think it's a +2, and it's only to melee attacks. This is add +1 attack to your next attack action. So that would cover like everything too. I like it, but it's only your next attack action. It's not, I believe the Cragheart's was +2 attack this round. So in theory, if you had multiple attacks, you could essentially get that bonus more than once. This is just your next attack action. But to be honest, most of the time, like for example, if you were to do that with this, one of the multiples, let's say this guy, you know, you would get that +1 on both attacks against both these units. So this is strong, but this is like not a new effect. It's pretty good, and you're happy to have it. I think the top of this card's strong. This is also very good to just pair with any of your other cards. So this is definitely a strong card. Incendiary throw, attack 1, range 3. So this is only our second ranged attack. So that range, that kind of like negative that we're going to get on our range for that shield is really not looking that bad right now. Attack 1, range 3, make the fire element. If the target suffers damage from this attack, the target and all enemies adjacent to the target gain wound. Whoa. That is good. That is seriously good. So this is kind of an effect that usually you would have to... I mean, you'd have to set up. I don't want to spoil too much about other Gloomhaven classes, but there is another Gloomhaven class where you can make this happen, but it takes a lot more setup than just one card. I get the fact that it's an attack 1, so for example, if you were to, you know, target something with shield, there's very low chance that you're actually going to do any damage here. So this is in early parts in the game, this is great. This is super good. In the early parts of the game. Really, really good. Everyone gaining wound. If you could just wound like 2 or 3 things, that's great. But again, you could just target the thing that has the that doesn't have the shield, that's adjacent to the guy with the shield, and it works. Because you'd get the wound on the shield guy, which is kind of what you want. So this is super strong. It's not even a burn, so this is just very... This is great. This is really great. And the fact that it makes an element as well. I mean, we don't use elements ourselves, but we'll see, I'm sure, with the other classes, people using elements. Summon Torchbearer, so another summon. 5 health. 5 health. That is insane amount of health to give to a summon at the beginning. I think there's only a few summons in Gloomhaven that come close to that level of health, and most of them are high level summons that you have to get from high level cards. So 5 health is great. And again, I don't know what the creature balance is going to be like, but if we're looking at this from the perspective of, hey, you can use your Gloomhaven characters in Frosthaven and vice versa, this is a crazy power level compared to level 1 of Gloomhaven. I mean, you would absolutely stomp early dungeons in Gloomhaven with this character. I do believe that in the campaign. Move 2. Attack 1 with wound as well. I mean, this is just insane. Like, the power level of this summon at level 1 is ridiculous. It's actually like, we're on another level now, guys. This is like another level. This is the kind of thing that in normal Gloomhaven, you would have to enhance. You'd have to spend like, I mean, to enhance this summon, you'd have to enhance its health. You'd have to add the wound to the attack. I mean, you're talking that you would have to probably invest something like 500 gold into this card to get these effects, and you're getting them for free at level 1. This is very powerful. This could be the best card that we've seen from this guy. I mean, there are other cards that, I mean, the general power level is really high, so it's hard for me to pick out exactly without playing, but this could be the best card because, I mean, this top, if you could do this in every room that you enter and you can consistently wound a few things every time you enter a new room, I mean, yeah, this is really strong. And this guy, you just sort of bring out maybe halfway through a scenario, maybe towards the end. I mean, the movement's pretty low, but I mean, that is in line with the movement of every summon in base Gloomhaven at level 1 anyway. So this movement is just like standard. Everything else is just up there. So movement is poor, but movement has always been poor. So this is great. Yeah. Okay. I'm going through the cards as have been uploaded into the Frosthaven Kickstarter. So this has all been pulled from the Kickstarter. So there's going to be a few like level 2 cards. I don't think we get many more. Yeah, there's like not all of the cards here at the moment. There's just sort of like enough to give you a bit of a flavor. So we'll go through a few things as well. But again, I'm trying to look at this more like a level 1 perspective. So we'll kind of, I don't want to spend forever on this video. So we're just going to kind of like glance over this stuff. because obviously they're going to be better versions than what we've got. But we're going to kind of like stick to what it's going to be like at level 1. That's like kind of like level 1, level 2, I guess, would be a good sort of point to call it. So driving inspiration, attack 2, range 4, make sun. I mean, the range on this is great. This is very long range. Kind of makes me feel like they've added extra range here just because we're going to be minusing range because of the shield. Part of me kind of thinks that, but this is nice, making another element. This is really nice. 18 initiative is very good. Very good. Summon Banner of Hope. Again, so this is another banner similar to the one that gave us attack, though. This one is giving us a heal. This is... I like this. This is a nice little utility thing. The heal 1 action is going to be super useful for removing things like wound and poison. So anybody that's played Glimmer will tell you, like, the worst thing in the world basically is to get poisoned. That is one of the worst effects. Stun is obviously terrible. You miss your turn. But poison is a really, really horrible effect to get on your tank, because you just know they're going to be taking 1 extra damage every single attack, and in order to remove that poison, you have to kind of take a heal action, which, if you have no potions or you have no way of sort of doing that easily, can be really, really troublesome. So this is a great way of removing poison and wound. I see it more as a sideboardy type card, especially because at the moment we personally don't have any way to use this element. So perhaps this is more of a sideboardy card depending on your composition. But it's strong, and this is a great trick for removing poison and wound. Pinning charge. So we'll do sort of like a couple of these cards. I don't want to spend too long on them, but we get a general sense of what they kind of get. So what the sense of the character is, right? So we're kind of looking at like what kind of character they're gonna end up being. So pinning charge, attack 2, range 3, add +1 attack to each ally adjacent to the target. That's a bit funky because, again, we're kind of a tank. Most of our cards require us to be next to the enemy already. So it's kind of unlikely unless we're playing some kind of maybe if we're playing like a party with 2 or 3 melee characters and 1 ranged, you might find some use for this. You can set this up to be better for sure. 3 allies within range 4 may perform move 2. Again, I just don't... I'm not so sure about this effect. This card to me is so-so. I think it's very so-so. Compared to the level 1 cards, I'm not as excited. I actually would be like, nah, I'll just keep some of these other cards, please. This is... yeah, doesn't seem to be that great. Meat Grinder is another level 2, or the other level 2 that we get. Presumably we're still getting... 2 cards from each level. Attack 4 with wound, 1 XP. Yeah. I mean, again, it's like the other wound card. It's really powerful. It's going to be difficult to set up. I feel like this one in particular is going to be more difficult to set up, right? Because if you think about the balance of how like a dungeon plays out, usually, you enter a room, enemies trigger, they see you, then they're going to start moving towards you. Usually you end up with kind of like a bit of a funneling effect where you have your person and then you have like a funnel of enemies coming off. It's quite difficult for your allies to get in behind in this kind of situation. But then again, we don't know what the new classes do. That's just the current classes you have access to that level 1. It's these kinds of patterns are more difficult to set up compared to, because you're going to be requiring things like jump. You're going to be requiring probably another character who is going to go fairly early on their turn. It's going to require a lot more coordination. So I mean, again, like effects like this may actually end up being better than I think they are because of cards like this. Move 3. Heal 1, regenerate, range 1. Very good. This card basically completely, in my opinion, replaces the other card. I would not have this card whatsoever. Like, the top of this is just like, because the reason why you're playing this card is the regenerate effect. You're not playing that card just for the heal 2. So to reduce it to a heal 1 and you get a move on top of it, really good. I mean, the range 1 does make it more difficult. I mean, what's this got in it? Range 2. So range 1 does make it more difficult. However, you can... This is going to be very useful. And also, if we have a look at the movement so far, this character only really has 2 movement cards that are sort of super useful, which are these 2 move 4s. They don't have like a move 3, or, you know, they don't have... I would kind of be expecting another move. This is a burn, so I don't really count cards like this in terms of our possible movements, because it's a burn, it's a one-off, and I don't really like that. I like consistent move cards. So the fact that this does have some use, but I certainly wouldn't count this on as a reliable move card. So this card, in my opinion, over this card is a slam dunk card compared to this, in my early impressions. Again, this is all subject to my early impressions. And I'm looking at everything for the first time, so I'm probably going to screw up. Level 3, let them come. Attack 2, poison. That's nice. This is kind of a weird pattern, but it's doable. It's kind of a bit of a funky one, but I'm sure that will happen at some point. Heal 2. Again, the way to look at these things is that if you just do it to 2, then it's probably worth it. Heal 2, affect self and ally in the green hex. Nice. Yeah, this is fine. Like, this is just like fine. I think the attack 2 is a bit underwhelming, but the poison is nice. It would have been really sweet if this poisoned first, then attacked, but I don't think there are too many things that do that. I don't think there are any cards that did that in original Gloomhaven. It'd be interesting to see if they ever sort of like mix that up a little bit. But yeah, an attack. I mean, poison is good. That's going to help your team out. And poisoning 3 things is strong. So yeah, this is good. And it's not a burn. There don't seem to be that many burn cards, or at least cards that I'm seeing like you want to burn, right? I mean, there's some of these like banners and stuff, but summon Banner of Courage, 7 health. All adjacent allies gain shield 1. I feel like this is my least favorite of the effects that we've had so far. I'm an aggressive player, so I prefer to have extra attack. You know, in my opinion, and I think a lot of other Gloomhaven players will probably vouch for this. A dead enemy is a better way of doing it, right? It's better to kill something than to defensively stock up. I play Gloomhaven very aggressively. I try to clear rooms quick, so this kind of effect doesn't really suit me. But I can see it having a place and potentially a good sideboard E-type card. But the problem is, at level 3, we're not talking about sideboard cards. We're talking about cards that immediately come into our deck. So the top is very strong, though. So this poison everything, it can be very strong. So we'll see. This one is attack 7, huge attack with a stun and 3 XP, but it is a burn. So here we go. We've got a burn. Attack 7 is huge. So attacking 7 with a stun is kind of a little bit... I mean, thematically, this makes a lot of sense. You're bashing someone on the head with a hammer, right? But if you're attacking something for 7, you kind of want to kill it. So the stun is not super relevant. If you miss, though, like for whatever reason, you draw your miss card, or you draw some like a -2, or it ends up not being quite as powerful as you were hoping, or against maybe a high health enemy, then this could still be very good. So this is, I mean, this is typical of some of the brute cards. Some of the brute has some big attack cards, but again, not attack 7. So this is power creep for sure. Attack 7. It's more difficult to set up. I will sort of like, there are caveats to this. This character does have some setup, whereas the brute did not have setup for a lot of their cards. But 3 XP is a lot of XP in this game. So, I mean, this can help you sort of speed up in terms of your leveling progression, and you get it early enough at level 3 that you are still going to be seeing the benefits. Move 5, bottom, amazing. Move 5 is brilliant, and it's a non-burn move 5. To be honest, this would be difficult. This would be a difficult decision for me between these two cards. Because I like the move 5, and I've already said that I think that this character might have some movement problems. Move 5 would really solve this. This is not a card, this is not a top that you're going to be playing straight away. This is definitely a top that you're going to be playing when you're in a bit of a bind or you come up against a difficult enemy. So this is not a card that you want to burn early in the scenario, so you can get a lot of use out of this move 5. 62 initiative is not the best, but you can always pair it with something. This is tricky between these two. I feel like this top is stronger than this top because it's not a burn, but this bottom is way stronger than this bottom. So I think I would probably end up going for Head of the Hammer, but I could see you going either way. Boldening Blow. So this is a nice one where you are in a area. Interesting that they have put 2 allies here. I wonder if there are any rules clarifications when if you are only playing with 2 characters rather than playing with 3. Like if you're just doing like a, you know, a 2-player playthrough. I know that you can get the 3rd ally through the summons or like the banners, for example. Presumably the banners classify themselves as allies. So there are ways you can do it, but it does make it harder, and it does mean you're going to have to burn cards to make that happen. So that's a consideration. I don't know if the rules change in that regard depending on how many mercenaries you've got in your party. Attack 3, disarm, target 1 enemy in the depicted area. So you can disarm 1 thing. That's nice. You just disarm the highest attack guy or the one who's drawn the, you know, the worst damage card that round. I'm fine with that. Bless, affect all allies in the green area. Blessing is nice. Interestingly, if you were to bless your own summon, then presumably you would put the bless in your own deck. So there is a way here that you could essentially bless yourself with this too. So in fact, if you had 2 summons there and you could in theory add 2 blesses to your own deck, I guess. And it's 1 XP and that's it. But this is kind of difficult to set up, as well as I think that this is a pretty unlikely situation that you're going to get the full value of 4 enemies out of this. That's unlikely. The bottom is move 2, 2 allies within range 3 may perform move 3. Again, this is all because they're trying to set up these ally situations, I think. We'll see. Well, with play, we'll see if it's strong. Air support, attack 4, range 3, make wind. This is an absolute fine attack. For level 4, it's a bit underwhelming. It's a bit, if you needed to make this element consistently, then I guess it's fine. But it's a pretty underwhelming top for a level 4 card, especially considering what we've seen already. And then the bottom is summon a trained falcon, which has got 1 health, that's great, 2 attack, 3 movement, and flying. I mean, it's not a burn though. Okay, it's not a burn. So I was just thinking like this is not a good summon, but then there's no burn. So in theory, you can get this back. This card you could recycle. This is difficult because I would have to play on experience, because if you could set this up fairly consistently, this is obviously the better card, I believe. But if you're struggling and you just want to kind of go down the easier route and you just want to be more consistent with your play, this could well be better. It's got a better initiative too. So, yeah. All right, so that's what we've got for the Banner Spear. I'll take a very quick look at their sheet just to see what kind of perks they get, see if there's anything here that stands out. To me, it looks like, okay, so they can thin their attack deck, so they're going to have a good attack modifier deck because they can remove the minus cards, and they can also sort of put some extra pluses in there. So they're going to have a nice consistent deck that's going to basically usually hit for the listed attack value or maybe a little bit higher. They've got the rolling modifiers in there. They've got rolling pierce. They've also got ignore negative item effects and remove 1/-1 card. That is great because negative item effects apply to things like armor. So if you're a tank character, it's very important that you take that perk and you take that perk early. So if you were to, at level 1, you get 1 perk, I would sort of suggest that this would probably be the perk that you take if you're going for the tank. Also getting to remove 1/-1 is definitely a buff over Gloomhaven, because in Gloomhaven it would just say this first line, you wouldn't have this -1. Okay, so my initial sort of impressions of the Banner Spear is that, you know, they are definitely a buffed up version of the Brute, it feels like. The Brute was already a very strong character. They don't have as much shield, they don't have as much retaliate, so they are definitely different. They are not like a straight tanking character because they don't have as much shield or retaliate, so in theory they're going to struggle a bit more with being a tank, so they're going to need more heals. So they're going to need a good healer to help them out. They're going to need good items, like armor items potentially, to help them out. But they seem like a very strong character and certainly much more powerful at level 1 than the other sort of comparable melee characters, such as the Brute, the Scoundrel, and the Cragheart from the starting Gloomhaven classes. Alright, so that's the Banner Spear. Alright, so this video ended up going a little bit longer than I was initially planning, so I salute you if you've managed to get this far. Please remember to like the video if you did like it, and hit that subscribe button if you'd like to see more. I will be doing a video on each of the different Frosthaven classes with comparisons to the Gloomhaven starting classes and sort of exactly in the same vein, so please do that. I also stream on Twitch every Monday, Wednesday and Sunday. You can find me at twitch.tv/mandatoryquest. So come and hang out, say hi. We play Gloomhaven live on stream, and we play some other games too, and we're pretty fun to hang out with, so please do. But apart from that, guys, thank you again for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll catch you in the next one.